The morning sun rose lazily over Umuokoro, a peaceful village nestled between rolling hills and red earth paths. The roosters had barely finished their song when Neca, the widow of the late Ogbuefi Ozoemena, was already outside, sweeping her compound with a bunch of dried palm fronds. Her compound, like her life, was modest, quiet, and orderly. Not a broom straw dared to lie out of place under her watch. She paused, wiped her forehead with the edge of her wrapper, and glanced at the small altar by the mango tree. There, she kept a wooden cross, a candle stub, and a picture of the Pope she had cut out from an old newspaper. Above all things, Neca was a woman of faith. But hers was not a gentle, open-hearted faith. It was a kind that burned with silent ambition, a kind that wore pride like a second skin. She clasped her hands, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Dear Lord, remember your promise. You said the barren shall bear, and the widow shall rejoice. I am ready, Lord. I have given you my son. Make him your servant. Make me the mother of a reverend father. That is all I ask." Neca's eyes opened with fierce determination. She looked toward the small room where her only son, Chidura, still slept. Chidura had been her reason for breathing ever since Ozoemena died 15 years ago after a mysterious cough that wouldn't stop. She had refused to remarry, and though many whispered that a woman her age shouldn't live alone, Neca stood tall. But she wasn't just living for herself, she was living for a vision. Every time she walked past the church and saw mothers of priests wearing their white lace ichafu with heads held high during processions, her heart ached with longing. She wanted that honor, that respect, that divine badge. She wanted to be called Inini Father. But there was one problem. Amaka. Amaka was everything Neca despised in a girl. Quiet, respectful, yet dangerously close to her son. She was the only daughter of Mama Amaka, a widowed palm wine seller who lived 2 compounds away. Amaka was beautiful in a humble way, with round eyes and a deep dimple that appeared when she smiled. Her laughter, soft like flutes, often echoed across the compounds when she and Chidura sat under the mango tree reading or playing akwi. They had been friends since childhood, inseparable, in fact. When Chidura fell and broke his arm at age 10, it was Amaka who ran barefoot through the village to fetch the dibia. When Amaka lost her dog, Chidura helped her dig a small grave and prayed beside her. It wasn't just friendship anymore. Everyone in the village knew they were fond of each other. Even Mama Amaka smiled at the bond and often said, "If it be say na God hand day inside this thing." But Neca thought otherwise. She knew what was going on. She wasn't blind. She saw the way her son's face lit up when Amaka arrived with roasted maize or fried akara. She saw the gentle way he spoke to her, the softness in his voice that only lovers wore. And that frightened her. One evening, after Chidura had returned from catechism class, Neca called him inside and shut the door. "Chidura," she began with a tone that didn't allow argument. "You are no longer a boy. You are 17. Time is flying, and God is watching. I have prayed for you since the day you were born. Your father may not be here, but I know what is best for you." "Yes, Mama. I have spoken with Father Emmanuel. He said there is an opening at the seminary school in Succa. We'll prepare the documents. By next month, you'll go and begin your journey." Chidura blinked. "Mama, seminary? I never said I wanted to become a priest." "You don't need to say it. God already said it. Have you forgotten the dream I had? The one where you were standing on the altar, raising the Eucharist?" Chidura swallowed hard. "But Mama, what about my studies? I thought I would go to university, maybe study law or accounting." Neca slammed the table. "Law? Accounting? What will that give me? Do you know the honor that comes from being a priest? Have you seen how the whole town kneels when Father Emmanuel passes? Do you know what it means for me to sit in the front pew as any father? You want to waste your life on nonsense." Chidura's eyes welled with silent tears. He had always respected his mother. She was all he had. But he also knew his heart. And in his heart, Amaka's name beat like a drum. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Chidura secretly met Amaka under the Udala tree one evening and held her hands. "I'm leaving soon," he whispered. "Why?" "My mother wants me to go to seminary school. She said it's what God wants." Amaka's lips trembled. "And what do you want?" "I want to be with you. But I don't know if I have a choice." She nodded slowly, pain clouding her eyes. "We've been friends since childhood, Chidura. I never thought anything would come between us." He leaned forward, brushing a tear off her cheek. You'll always be in my heart." That night, they shared their first and last moment of intimacy under the stars, one that would change everything. By the time Neca arranged for his departure the next week, Amaka hadn't even had the chance to say goodbye. Neca made sure of that. She packed his bags, called the parish priest to pray over him, and sent him off in a Peugeot van before dawn. To Chidura, it felt like exile. To Amaka, it felt like betrayal. But to Neca, it was a victory. What she didn't know was that the seed of rebellion had already taken root. Amaka missed her period 2 months later. And when she confirmed the pregnancy, she clutched her belly, knelt by her late father's grave, and cried, "Papa, I don't know how to do this, but I will try." Her mother didn't ask many questions. She simply said, "My daughter, we will carry this cross together." But no one knew how heavy it would be. The morning Amaka realized she was pregnant, the world around her stood still. She had been sitting by the stream side washing her clothes, her legs buried ankle-deep in cold water, when a sudden wave of dizziness swept through her. She dropped the bar of soap in her hand and held her forehead. For weeks, she had been brushing aside the nausea, the swollen breasts, the constant tiredness. She blamed it on stress, on malaria, on anything her mind could grasp. But as she sat there, dizzy and frightened, she knew the truth had come home. The child was his. Chidura's. Her hands trembled as she scooped water to her face. She could hear distant laughter from village girls carrying water pots on their heads, their voices like the careless wind. Life was going on, but hers had paused in a terrifying silence. She couldn't cry. Not yet. She folded her wrapper and left the stream, walking as if her legs no longer belonged to her. The red dust from the footpath clung to her skin as she made her way home, her heart pounding with every step. Her mother, Mama Amaka, sat outside pounding akpa beans when she arrived. She raised her head and frowned. "Amaka, what is it? Why are you shaking like leaf under harmattan wind?" Amaka stood frozen. Words failed her. She opened her mouth once, twice, before her voice finally found its way out. "Mama, I'm pregnant." The pestle slipped from her mother's hand and landed with a thud inside the mortar. Silence. Not a dog barked. Not a hen clucked. Mama Amaka stared at her daughter for a long time. Not with judgment. Not with anger. But with the quiet sorrow of a woman who had known too many disappointments in life. She stood slowly, walked to the bench, and sat. "Sit down." Amaka obeyed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Who is responsible?" "Chidura." She nodded, as though she had suspected. "Does he know?" Amaka shook her head. "He left. His mother took him away. She didn't even allow me say goodbye." Tears finally broke from her eyes. "I didn't do it out of carelessness, Mama. I love him, and I thought he loved me too. I don't know what to do now." Mama Amaka reached for her daughter's hand. "You will carry your cross, my child. And I will carry it with you. We will survive this." The news spread like dry season fire. In Umuokoro, no sin remained hidden for long. One person told another, and soon the entire village had their mouths full of Amaka's story. Some scorned, some laughed, some shook their heads with pity. "She has destroyed her future," they said. "Just like her mother," others added, forgetting how life had already punished Mama Amaka enough. Neca, however, said nothing. She heard the whispers. She saw the side glances in church. She knew it was Chidura's doing. But she did not go to Amaka. She did not go to Mama Amaka. She simply clasped her hands in prayer and muttered, "The devil works hard, but God works harder." Inside her heart, she rejoiced that Amaka's shame would forever seal her unworthiness. No priest would want a child or a lover. Her son was safe. Her dream was intact. Amaka's belly grew. With each passing moon, her frame thickened, her walk slowed, but her resolve strengthened. She refused to hide. She still fetched water, still cleaned the house, still helped her mother at the farm. She didn't want to be a girl people pitied. She wanted her child to know that strength ran through her blood. Then came the night the rain refused to fall, but the lightning cracked the sky like broken glass. Labor had begun. Mama Amaka had seen enough births to know when the baby was coming. She boiled water, called the elderly nurse midwife, Mama Igodi, and lit the lanterns. The pain hit Amaka like thunderclaps, deep, wrenching, unforgiving. She screamed. She wept. She begged for it to end. Inside that small room with no ceiling board, Amaka held her mother's hands and screamed, "Mama, I can't. I can't do it again. You will, my child. Just one more push. Her breathing turned shallow. Her face was pale. The baby was coming fast. Mama Igodi pressed her thighs apart. One more time. Push, Amaka. Push like your life depends on it. And then, a cry, sharp, strong, and alive, broke the air. A baby girl. Mama Amaka took the child in trembling arms, her eyes soaked with gratitude. You are welcome, my child. May the gods bless your feet on this earth. But even before she could finish the blessing, she noticed something wrong. Amaka's eyes were closing. Her lips were pale. Her chest barely rose. Mama, she whispered weakly. Is she okay? She is, my daughter. You gave us an angel. A faint smile curled on Amaka's lips. Name her Aloy, God's goodness. Then her eyes closed. Forever. The wailing echoed before the dawn broke. People gathered. The women keened. The elders stood in silence. She was too young. She had too much pain. Why didn't Chidura come back? But no answer came. Only the cold body of a girl who carried her cross alone. Aloy grew up in that house where sorrow and joy mingled. From the day she was born, people said she carried something different. Her eyes, large and bright, seemed to carry knowledge beyond her age. She learned to speak early, walked before other children her age. At 5, she could recite full Bible verses and answer riddles no adult could. People called her Amaka's second chance. And Mama Amaka poured her life into the child. Everything she could not give her daughter, she gave her granddaughter. She protected her fiercely, taught her well, prayed over her every night. And when Alyama began to ask, "Where is my daddy?" she would simply say, "He is far away, my dear. Far, far away." She never lied. But she never explained. Not yet. Somewhere, far from the world that once embraced him, Reverend Father Chidura was rising through the ranks. He prayed. He preached. He performed miracles in people's hearts. But inside him, there was a hole he couldn't explain. A haunting shadow that returned in dreams. Sometimes he saw Amaka, standing at a distance, holding a baby. But every time he tried to approach her, she would disappear into smoke. One morning, after Mass, he sat in the chapel alone, staring at the crucifix. He whispered, "Lord, why do I feel incomplete? Why do I feel like I left something behind?" But heaven was silent. Until one day, the bishop sent him back to Umuokoro for community outreach and revival. He had not stepped foot there in almost 20 years, and his past was waiting. The return of Reverend Father Chidura Ozoemena to Umuokoro stirred the village like a hornet's nest poked with a stick. It began with whispers, low, respectful, but buzzing across palm wine joints, church fellowships, and even the village square. The same boy who had vanished years ago had become a reverend father. The same boy whose mother, Neca, once walked around in faded wrappers and bare feet, was now driving in with the bishop's entourage and hosting morning devotions on radio. Women wrapped their wrappers tighter and cleaned their front yards. Men rehearsed their church greetings. Even the local catechist began brushing his teeth more than once a day. But nobody prepared for what his return would uncover. Chidura's car, a modest Toyota Corolla marked Catholic Archdiocese of Nsukka, rolled into the village just after sunrise. The early morning dew still clung to the mango leaves, and the village looked almost too quiet, as though it had paused to watch. As he stepped out, the sun caught his cassock, casting a glow around his frame. His cross swung gently from his neck. His face was calm, mature, and tinged with something softer than age, regret. His mother, Neca, ran out barefoot to welcome him, her hands lifted in praise. "Aloy, my son, my reverend father, the Lord has done it." Chidura embraced her lightly, his eyes scanning the village. So little had changed, and yet everything felt foreign. The scent of burning firewood, the rustling of bamboo leaves, the laughter of children chasing each other barefoot. It all made his chest tighten. After resting and freshening up, he sat alone outside, listening to the sound of crickets and distant voices. "Has Mama Amaka's house changed?" he asked his mother casually. Neca stiffened slightly. "Hers? Why are you asking about her?" "I just remembered her daughter, Amaka. We used to be friends." "Friends?" Neca scoffed under her breath, then quickly changed her tone. "That girl? Life didn't favor her. Poor thing passed away." Chidura's eyes widened. "She's dead." Neca nodded with practiced solemnity. "Yes, a long time ago. She died giving birth, they say. Some say she was careless. Others say she was bewitched. But may her soul rest in peace. Silence hung heavy between them. A child? Chidura asked slowly. Whose child? Neca replied too quickly. He looked at her. She was pregnant, he repeated. His mother hesitated for half a breath. I don't know the full story. Rumors, my son. Don't fill your head with village stories. But that night, sleep would not come. The next morning, dressed in his white cassock, Father Chidura walked the old footpath toward Mama Amaka's compound. He remembered the way, though the path was overgrown. The bush whispered old memories, of laughter, of barefoot races, of secret words under the stars. He reached the compound and stood by the entrance, taking it all in. The thatched hut was still there. The raffia mat still hung on the wall. But there was a new addition, a young girl, about 16, seated on a low stool, reading under the mango tree. She looked up. Their eyes met. And in that moment, something inside Chidura shifted. There was something strikingly familiar in her gaze. Her eyes were like Amaka's. Her cheekbones, her posture, the calm intelligence in the way she looked at him without fear. Good morning, he greeted gently. She stood up. Good morning, Father. You're looking for someone? Yes. I came to see Mama Amaka. She's inside. Let me get her. He watched the girl walk inside, and his heart thudded loudly in his chest. Could it be? Moments later, Mama Amaka emerged. She looked older, thinner, but her strength had not withered. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Father Chidura. He smiled gently. Mama, it's been a long time. She didn't return the smile. I came to pay my respects. I heard about Amaka. I was shocked. She said nothing. I didn't know, he added softly. I would have come. I should have known. She nodded slowly and gestured for him to sit on the wooden bench under the tree. The air was heavy with silence before she finally spoke. You want to know what happened? Chidura looked up. Yes, Mama. I've carried this burden since I returned. She loved you, she began. Loved you with a pure heart. Even when your mother hated her, she kept believing in you. You left without a word. And 2 months later, she found out she was pregnant. Chidura froze. She carried the pregnancy with shame, alone. Gossips tore her apart. No one helped her. Not even your mother, who knew the truth and said nothing. And when she gave birth to that girl you saw now, yes, that's your daughter, she died. He blinked, shaking his head as if trying to wake from a dream. She's mine? No, it can't be. It is. But I never knew. Mama never told me. Mama Amaka looked at him, her eyes sharp as cutlass. She didn't want anything to stain her title, mother of a reverend father. She sacrificed everything to be called Enini Father, even her son's truth. Chidura felt the blood drain from his face. And the girl, he whispered. What's her name? Alyomachuku, she said. The name your Amaka gave her before she died. She said it means God's goodness, even in suffering. He covered his face with both hands and sobbed quietly. For days after, Chidura barely spoke. His sermons were shorter, his eyes swollen. He spent long hours in the church, lying prostrate before the altar. How could he preach forgiveness when he had caused so much pain? He returned again to Mama Amaka's house. This time, to see Alyama. She stood up when he approached. I know now, he said gently. I know the truth. I'm sorry. She looked at him calmly. You're my father? Yes. Then where have you been? I didn't know, Alyama. I would have come. I would have. But you didn't. Tears formed in his eyes. I didn't grow up with a father, she said. But I had my grandmother. And I had my mother's stories. Now I understand why she cried some nights. I can't undo what's done. But I want to know you. I want to be your father, if you'll let me. She paused, staring at the man in cassock. So holy, yet so human. So broken, yet now trying to mend. I'll think about it, she said. And just when hope was beginning to flicker, the unexpected came. During morning mass, Father Chidura collapsed at the altar. At the hospital, tests were run. The results, severe kidney failure. The doctor spoke gently but clearly. He needs a transplant. As soon as possible. His kidneys are failing fast. His mother, Neca, cried and begged. Take mine. Take mine. The doctors shook their heads. You're too old. It won't match. Several parishioners volunteered. All unmatched. And so, the doctor asked, does he have a child? Neca froze. The doctor continued. Sometimes, biological children make the best matches. She shook her head slowly. No, no child. But that night, She sat by his hospital bed and looked at the pale, sleeping face of her son. She could not keep it any longer. She leaned close and whispered, "You have a daughter. Alyama. That girl. She's yours." He opened his eyes slowly. "What did you say?" "I did it all for you," she wept. "For God. For the church. So you would be holy. But now I can't lose you." The news of Reverend Father Chidura's failing health shook the village of Umuokoro to its core. People gathered in small groups to pray. The church bell rang every hour. Women wore mourning wrappers as if death was already hovering over the man they now saw as both priest and miracle worker. Everyone was grieving, everyone except one person, Alyomachukwu, the girl who had been born into sorrow. The girl who had watched her mother's grave grow weeds while others laughed with their fathers. The girl who had been abandoned before she even had a name. She had heard it all. Mama Amaka had told her the truth in full. That her father was the same priest now lying in a hospital bed in Nsukka, his life hanging by the thread of a failing kidney. That her grandmother, the same Neca who had rejected her existence, was the reason her mother died in silence. That the man who wanted to know her now was the one who had never once known of her. And now? Now they wanted her blood. Alyama sat under the moonlight that night, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes gazing into nothing. Mama Amaka sat beside her, silent as the stars. "I don't know what to do, Mama," Alyama whispered. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," her grandmother replied softly. "But he's my father, and he's dying." Mama Amaka sighed. "Yes, but he wasn't there when your mother died. He wasn't there when you cried at night asking who your father was. And the woman who now comes begging? She once called you a mistake." A tear escaped Alyama's eye. "I don't want him to die, but I don't know if I can forgive him." Mama Amaka turned to her. "Forgiveness is not forgetting, Alyama. It is choosing to heal without demanding payment." Alyama's voice trembled. "Do you think my mother would have forgiven him?" Mama Amaka smiled, a deep, pained smile. "She named you God's goodness. Even in her death, she chose grace." The next morning, at Nsukka General Hospital, the sound of footsteps echoed through the white-tiled hallway. Neca, sitting beside her son's bed, looked up as the door creaked open. Alyama stepped in. She wore a simple gown and carried a plastic file. Her eyes met Chidura's, and in them he saw not just a child, but a mirror of his past, his pain, and his second chance. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice barely a whisper. She sat beside the bed, opened the file, and placed the test results in front of the doctor. "Blood match. Kidney compatible." The doctor smiled. "This is good news. We can schedule surgery immediately." Alyama nodded, but looked at Chidura. "Before that, I need to say something." He turned toward her weakly. "I grew up hating the shadow of your name. I hated the silence you left behind. I hated that people pitied me but never looked you in the eye. And I hated that the woman who should have embraced me, your mother, made my life harder just so she could wear a title. But," she paused, her voice cracking, "I also saw how much my mother loved you. Even when you were gone, she defended your name. She never cursed you. She believed you'd come back. And when she died, she gave me the name Alyomachukwu, because she said the pain was worth the blessing. So, I forgive you." Tears slid down Chidura's cheeks. "I don't deserve it," he said. "No, you don't. But you're still my father. And I want you to live." She stood, walked to the window, and stared out. "I'm not doing this because you're my blood. I'm doing it because my mother would have done it." Chidura turned to his mother, Neca, who had been silent, her hands trembling. "You heard her," he said. "That is the woman you called a disgrace." Neca dropped to her knees and sobbed uncontrollably. "I am sorry. I destroyed everything. I wanted pride. I wanted honor. I didn't know it would cost us so much." Alyama turned. "You didn't just destroy your son's life. You destroyed mine too." "I know," Neca wept. "Please, forgive me." Alyama didn't answer. She simply walked out with the doctor. The surgery was scheduled. 3 weeks later, Father Chidura sat on a bench under the hospital tree, thinner, pale, but alive. Beside him sat Alyama, reading a book. He watched her in silence, tears forming again. Not from pain, from grace. "Will you let me be part of your life now?" he asked quietly. She looked up. "One day at a time, Father." He nodded. That was enough. A few months later, back in Umuokoro, news came that Neca had fallen ill. It was a strange sickness, quiet, creeping, but deep. The kind that no doctor could explain. She had stopped eating. She barely spoke. Her wrappers were loose around her shoulders. The once proud woman who had lived for a title had no more titles to hold on to. One afternoon, she called Chidura and asked for one last request. I want to see her. Chidura called Alyama. She arrived quietly and stood beside the dying woman's mat. Neca looked at her with hollow eyes and whispered, I never held you. I never gave you water. But you gave me back my son. Please forgive me. Alyama knelt beside her and placed her hand over hers. I already did. Neca smiled weakly and died. The burial of Neca Ozoemena was small and quiet. No fanfare, no celebration, just the humble farewell of a woman who learned too late what mattered. Father Chidura did not return to full priesthood. He retired from active ministry and moved to Nsukka, where he began a foundation in Amaka's name, the Alyumachukwu Foundation, providing care for pregnant girls and orphan children. He and Alyama met often. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. But each time, the space between them shrunk. The bond grew. One day, as they visited Amaka's grave, Alyama placed fresh flowers and whispered, Mama, I carried the cross, and I survived. Chidura placed a hand on her shoulder and said, So did I. And in the soft breeze that passed through the trees, it felt as though Amaka smiled.